is being held by the Ministry of Patriots and Veterans Affairs. And as we just saw, it seems like it's giving the audience there a full script, a full understanding of what the event was like 58 years ago. Why the need to go ahead and review such instances?
I believe that this special celebration of today's event, back to 58 years ago, as a meaningful event. If you think about the last years, what you call the candlelight revolution, how come our people are so strong and so compassionate about, the people's power, regaining people's power, and kicking out the dictatorship, and where the powers are actually coming from, and tracing back in our history, we think about the 419 the student revolution, and 516 that the Gwangju,
right.
Right.
May 18th.
But the beginning of the very early stage of the beginning of the civil uproar and the student movement was, we can find that, this 1960s, February 22nd, which is today, is Daegu students movement. I think that's, I think first meaningful the event that we can think about. So this is why, we try to review our history and found this event more significant, more memorable as of today.
As you've just mentioned, looking back at modern Korean history, the country is largely marked by alternating periods of democratic movement and autocratic rule. Over the decades, we have also witnessed a number of democratic movements, like you've just mentioned, the April 19th, the Gwangju uprising on May 18th, and the June 10th movement. What do all these movements and events say about Korea and the people?
Well, I think this is about what we are and who we are. We have what you call the dual sovereignty, the people's power and monarchy. Later became dictatorship, later becoming aristocracies. These two the civil powers are sometimes confronting each other and sometimes fighting each other, sometimes make harmony each other. And when one side of power gains too much power and dominate the other, then especially the dictatorship side, the power elite side, political elite side. And then, the common people are very upset, and they become to regain and thus make this country balanced. That's how it goes. In our history, even past this, 228, the student movement, there was many incidents we can take. The March 1st in 1919, we have a liberation movement against Japanese occupation.
Which is tomorrow.
Right. Right. And then it comes a cyclical event. Every maybe in one generation is 25 to 30 years, and then the old generation might have experienced it with the civil movement, and then the next generation has similar things, and they know it. They can do that. They have a sense of powers and authority, and then that's how they initiate this kind of movement. So in our country, this is national pride, and also it comes to our national identity. When it comes to corrupted government and the tyranny, the dictatorship, then people in any time we remember how we regain our power from the sovereignty. That's how it goes.
Regain the power in terms of fairness, you mean? It all comes with the backdrop of Korean people's hoping and trying to bring back the fairness within the community and the country itself.
Exactly. The basic the things that we have to all remind ourselves with this government is of Korea has a form of the democracies. Our constitutional law. The first chapter said Korea is a democratic republic, and all the sovereignties reside with people, and all the power comes from people. And that's basic thing. Then all the time, through this memorial celebration, we remind ourselves how the power comes from, where it comes from. Okay.
And this year's Memorial Day may feel a bit different to many Koreans, especially with the liberal Moon Jae-in government designating the day as a national Memorial Day. What does this mean for the day itself and perhaps the administration in terms of their policy?
As I mentioned before, the fairness concept and justice concept resides every corners and region of the country, not just from the Progressive Party people or Gwangju people or some small segment of people who are actively involved in the Seoul area. And in fact, the Yeongnam and southeastern areas are very active, has been very active against tyranny and dictatorship, and we did not keep this record thoroughly. So this today's event is kind of remind us, all the people, that all nation has very strong against corruption, injustice, and we share all this justice concept and fairness concept in each and every citizen.
And perhaps, as you've just mentioned, that is why the skit is being held at the scene of the commemorative event, just to remind the country and the people again of some of the history that were neglected and not had with no spotlight on it.
I think so. Another thing we have to think about in today's event through the monitor is that it makes a kind of the younger generation's festival kind of things. There's singing and dancing and all kind of celebration. That means it's not about what we have to share among the power elite and upper class people. All the nation, old people, younger people, and even children might have to enjoy this events because this is one of our precious national assets in the history.
And as we've briefly mentioned, what does this boosting of the event to a national level event speak about the new liberal government?
Well, I'm going to start with last year's the candlelight revolution. That was against the social injustice against political power. But we haven't done anything about the rest of the areas corruption, like economic injustice and our public areas and government corruption kind of thing. Because social justice has to be all over the country and people, and people's victory in the last year might have to spread all over the corner of the country. So that means, when the chaebol and the economic elite people and the power, any kinds of power elite people, when they do any injustice, maltreatment against the people, especially people with underprivileged situation, we might have to remind that you're gonna have to think about, what's gonna be in your future eventually.
Because the fairness that all Koreans value will come and try to find justice.
I think so. This is kind of the uniqueness of our nation. People are very strongly against injustice, and we are very strong believers on this fairness. Because every daily lives, we have to remind that, am I treated fairly? Am I treating other people fairly? My job, my class. So this is kind of the national identity that has embedded in every citizen of mind, and it's called consciousness ourselves.
And just to brush upon some of the history that we have neglected in the beginning of the newscast, tell us as to what had happened in 1960 in Daegu, February 28th, as we've seen in the video footage with some of the performers performing a skit, trying to brush upon the memory that had not been focused on it before.
It was Lee Sung-man's administration. They tried to extend their regime illegally. They find a way, so they made something against the rival, the party's leader, and all the public agencies and the people and the public schools teachers try to ban the students participating in this political event, the rivalry, the party's event. So students were very upset, and they said, this is not right, this is not what we believe, kinds of democracy of our kind. So they are upset, and they walk out, and then they gather around. It starts from the just individual small number of students, high school students I'm talking about. But that time they have to be very brave, because the high school student might have to be amicable, nice, and obedient. But sometimes they have to.
And let me interrupt. I think we are seeing President Moon Jae-in entering the site for the event and giving his speech and address to the nation. We are going to cut live to the scene. That is President Moon Jae-in taking the stage. And let's listen in.
My fellow Korean citizens, Daegu citizens, the proud February 28th democracy movement of Daegu has been designated as National Memorial Day, and today marks its first commemoration. I congratulate all of you. On this first commemoration, it's a great honor for me to deliver the commemorative speech as the president. The political power had once ruled over the citizens. Democracy was suppressed, and the lives of the people were also suppressed. But the corrupted autocratic rule seemed like a great wall, something that could not be overcome. 58 years ago today was also one of those days. Yet here in Daegu, the brave cry began. The cry broke the silence and resignation that surrounded the entire nation for a very long time. We are just. Justice lives. Light up the torch, the light of the East. And they were the high school students of Daegu. Against such background, the first resistance must have felt like hitting a rock with an egg. Yet the students took to the streets, leaving behind fear. That bravery and a sense of justice have now transformed the Korean modern history. Back then, a newspaper even described student representatives who had to say farewell after a handshake, saying, "Let's meet in heaven." This was the first student democracy movement after liberation, and it was February 28th democracy movement. The students of Daegu awoke democracy, and it led to students' movements in other parts of the country. February 28th democracy movement was like wildfire, and it spread in the hearts of the people. And finally, it ignited March 15th movement and April 19th revolution. This was when the power of the citizens defeated dictatorship in Republic of Korea. Fellow Korean citizens, through the candlelight revolution, we once again proved that citizens can win over authority. Looking back, the starting point was February 28th democracy movement. And since then, we embarked on our noble journey towards democracy. June Democratic Movement created a big wave, and the Candlelight Revolution has finally led us to a greater democracy. Today, we remember the students of Daegu and their first torch of democracy, and also how this was such a great beginning. The February 28 democracy movement was not only a part of history for Daegu, but it was for our entire people. The long hopes of Daegu citizens who longed for this day to be designated as a National Memorial Day have finally come true. Fellow Korean citizens, participating in such a meaningful day today, I thought about another meaning of February 28 democracy movement, and that is solidarity and cooperation. February 28 democracy movement was Korea's first democracy movement of its kind, yet it was not evaluated as it should have been. And it received its legal legitimacy as a democracy movement after 5 decades, only in 2010. However, our citizens have finally revived the spirit of the movement with the power of solidarity and cooperation. And on this basis, there are the mutual exchanges between February 28th democracy movement and May 18th democracy movement. Under the name of Moonlight Alliance, Daegu and Gwangju commemorated the February 28 democracy movement together. Citizens of Daegu, Daegu City, and its provincial authorities' support for its designation as a National Memorial Day has finally expanded its national support and sympathy. The February 28th spirit has tied up Daegu with a single mind and connected Daegu and Gwangju. And this became the basis of today. We are faced with various challenges. Today, I hope that the February 28th commemorative movement's solidarity and cooperation can navigate us through such challenges. In particular, I would like to address the citizens of Daegu. The National Debt Redemption Movement has been listed as UNESCO Memory of the World. Sinam Patriotic Martyrs Park has been designated as a national cemetery. And in this line, February 28 Democracy Movement has been designated as a Memorial Day. I congratulate this with the people of the country. Now we commemorate the just movement of the day as a National Memorial Day. Yet the spirit of Daegu has always been shining within the history of the Republic of Korea. Daegu and Gyeongsangbuk-do Province is home to the biggest number of independence patriots in Korea, and it was the base of such public movements. The innovative movement of the Confucian scholars, the Justice Army fighting against Japanese rule, and independence movement, all these are the roots of Korea and the pride of all of our citizens. Even now, the region is home to the spirit of classical scholars. Yet such spirit is not something outdated. It is a spirit seeking innovation and justice. And this very spirit has gave birth to the February 28th democracy movement against the autocratic rule. Here in Daegu, the National Debt Redemption Movement began. And in the 90s, this led to the movement of collecting gold during the Asian financial crisis. With the Nakdonggang River Defense Frontline, it was Daegu that defended the country. And also, it was Daegu that gave birth to industrialization, which later led economic development. Like this, Daegu is a city with great pride. And today, through this commemoration ceremony, I hope the pride of Daegu people that has led great challenges in times of difficulties could continue to shine. The will for justice and freedom in Daegu should now break out from spiritual acid, and I hope this can become a real power for making a just Republic of Korea. My fellow Korean citizens of Daegu, the path we take together, the path we walk together is democracy. We should walk towards a wider, a deeper, and a more robust democracy. And today, let us once again make a resolution for this path. The Independence Patriots of February 28 Democracy Movement and citizens of Daegu, I once again extend my respect. Thank you very much.
There you have it. That was South Korean President Moon Jae-in marking the February 28th democratic movement that took place in Daegu back in 1960. It is the first Memorial Day since the Moon administration had designated it as a national commemorative day. And that'll do it for us for this special coverage on the February 28th democratic move. And Professor Hwang Myung-jin, thank you for your time and your insights today.
Thanks.
And as for the viewers, we will have a full wrap-up of the president's remarks during our next newscast coming up in less than half an hour at noon Korea time. From all of us here at Arirang News, thank you for watching and goodbye for now.
In search of timeless and priceless heritage in Korea. Time Priceless, World Heritage in Korea. Changdeokgung Palace. The 5 royal palaces of Hanyang, the capital of Joseon. The one that served as a royal residence for the longest time. The most Korean of the 5 palaces